I think most of you were just, so this time I got kicked off, but it was not in airplane mode. This time it just dropped. Now you can say that's a coincidence. It probably is. But I've never talked about this topic before, at least not taking the side that I'm about to say. So let me say before I get kicked off of here again, the fact that we have not heard an alternate explanation, or even that one is coming, about the phrase insurance policy, on top of the fact, there are a couple of things I retweeted today, and they're worth looking at. One is Ann Coulter's summary of the whole dossier situation with Strzok. You should read that, if only because she's such a good writer. She's so clear that she breaks it down in such a clear way that I don't know if I can believe there was anything but a coup attempt. It's possible there wasn't, but at this point, the evidence is so overwhelming for that interpretation that I think you'd have to say the FBI is compromised. So I'm coming down on that side, and this is a big change for me. Remember, I was the one who said from the start that you shouldn't overinterpret this. Probably it's just people doing their job, stuff taken out of context, blah, blah, blah. Look also at the other thing that I retweeted. It came from Donald Jr.'s, he tweeted it first, and I retweeted it. Story from, I think it's the Federalist, in which they point out that the Russia collusion story has sort of disappeared from the news all at once. And the reasons for that are explained in a way that finally makes sense, that the media is just part of the coup attempt. Now, that doesn't mean that they sat in a meeting together and had meetings, but in outcome, that's essentially what's happening. Is it freezing on your side? It's not freezing on my side yet. So now, given this new opinion, which is literally just today. So this is my brand new opinion today, which is quite different from what it was. It had been wait and see, and in all likelihood, there's not a big problem here at the FBI. That was my opinion yesterday, and had been my opinion since the first Strzok page emails came out, because that's usually what's true. At this point, the weight of evidence is somewhat overwhelmingly, not conclusively, but overwhelmingly on the side that some members of the FBI were part of a semi-organized, at least organized within their little group, literal coup attempt against the president who had been legally elected. And it appears that the whole Russia collusion thing was probably part of this. It's not an accident that we've gone this far and not reached any kind of conclusion on the Russian collusion. And that the farther we go into the Russia collusion, the more we find out about the FBI being dirty. Now, I'll throw in the thing that everybody throws in. It's like, oh, I'm not talking about the rank and file. It's just a few bad characters at the top. I almost cursed, but this is my 2018 new approach. Instead of the cursing, I took a breath and I waited. So I'm not going to curse. Your analysis is suspect. Well, it should be, because it's not conclusive. You should be skeptical about my interpretation and anyone else's. So let me say this. This is going to be sort of a tentative prediction. I believe that Mueller is far more likely legitimate than corrupt. No guarantees in this world, and I wouldn't say the same about most of the characters involved in this story. But yeah, maybe Horowitz will have something too. But at this point, it is definitely in the president's interest that Mueller reaches a conclusion. because I think we'd know if it were bad, if that conclusion was going to be bad for the president. We probably already know. But let me add this. If you've ever managed any kind of a project, and you could say that that Mueller is a project. If you've ever managed a project, you know that projects never end until you give them an artificial deadline. So if you're building a house, you say, well, I got to have this house done by X or else the world will end. And that's really the only way you can get your contractor to show up. You got to tell them there's a party, you're getting ready for a wedding. You got to have some reason for a project to end. Mueller has no reason to end. Now, Trump would be in big trouble if he fired him. All right, everybody agrees. Even if he has the best reasons in the world, he would be in big trouble to fire Mueller. But here's what I'd like to suggest, and there may be some reason not to do this, but it's not obvious to me. I would suggest that Trump give Mueller a generous, specific deadline. Now, when I say deadline, that means that he needs to report out everything he knows to, let's say, some members of Congress who have whatever clearance. That doesn't mean he has to tell the world, but that he should have a specific deadline. And if at the end of that deadline he says, look, here's everything we found, and here are the good reasons I should continue to follow these leads, well, then you can extend it, like any project. Any project can be extended, right? You just decide to extend it. But if you don't give him a deadline, he's never going to end. Or at least, not until he gets tired or runs out of things to do. Who knows if that'll ever happen. So I say the president should give him a generous, specific deadline. Let's say end of June, maybe end of the summer. So whatever makes sense in that world. I don't know what a good deadline would be. And to say, look, for the benefit of the country, the benefit of the, just getting on with our lives, you do have a deadline now. I'm not going to fire you before that deadline, period. If at the deadline you present to Congress a legitimate reason to continue, then we'll take that question up, all right? If you have not presented to Congress, and you don't even have to give the results to the president, it could just be, I don't know, the Intel Committee, whatever makes sense. If you cannot convince Congress that you're worth another few months, then the contract is over. You're done with whatever you've done by that time, all right? So that allows, and by the way, the investigation has gone on long enough that I don't believe anybody would ever say, if he went another 6 months, I don't think anybody's going to say, you didn't wait long enough. Instead, they're going to say, what the hell took so long? Nobody's going to say you didn't wait long enough if you wait till the end of the summer. So, because Trump is a business person, he can say to the country what I just said, and I'll say it again. Look, people, if you've ever been involved in any kind of project, whether it's construction on your house, adding a new wing, not wing, but new room, or if you've ever seen a project at work, you know that if it doesn't have a deadline, it will go forever. Boom. That's called pacing. All right. If the President of the United States says, from your own experience that a project without a deadline will go forever because they're getting paid, everybody in the country, for him or against him, will say, okay, that's totally true. And he's spending your taxpayers' money. Okay, that's totally true. And it's been, whatever, a year and a half or 2 years or whatever by the time that, I don't know how long that will be. And you say, that's a long time. Then you also say, there's got to be an end. So I'm going to pick this date, and that's the date you need to read out to Congress. If they make an argument for continuing, the country doesn't need to know everything you found, because you might need to keep some stuff secret in order to follow a lead. But somebody in the government needs to see your argument that you need to keep going. And it better be good, and we haven't heard anything yet. And then The president can just end the contract. In fact, the president can say, I didn't fire him. The contract ran out. And he didn't give us a reason to extend it. So if the president doesn't put a timer on this, a generous one, right? If he says wrap it up next week, that's not even playing fair. But if he picks a generous timeline and says every project's got to have a due date, there's yours. I don't think you're going to get much pushback. I really don't. Now, my understanding of the Russian collusion is that there are two main parts of it. Three, I guess. One part of it would be that there were people who talked to Russians. And everybody in Russia seems to be connected to the Kremlin. Like, if you have enough money in Russia to wear a necktie, you're probably connected to the Kremlin. Or you tell people you are. It's probably good to say you're connected to Putin no matter who you are. So that's kind of sketchy, and the people involved have been, certainly investigated, Page and Papadopoulos, and they didn't seem to have much to do with the campaign itself. The other thing is the Facebook ads, and I tweeted a study from Stanford this morning saying that there aren't any ads that make a difference. In other words, even Hillary Clinton's own ads, according to a Stanford study that studied lots of studies, it showed that advertising just doesn't work. It doesn't make any difference at all. Zero. They actually used the word zero, a number of times to make sure that you knew it wasn't 1%, because 1% could actually make a difference. But they were pretty clear about zero. So even if Russia tried to interfere, the science says they didn't, at least in the Facebook ad part, not in other elements. And then the other part is the other dog that didn't bark. Because right now we've got, 17 intel agencies that all say Russia was behind the hacking of Podesta's email and Clinton's server. Now that may be true. But here's the part that I'm waiting to hear, but I haven't. Everybody who is a hacker knows that you can make your hack look like it came from somewhere else. So in the normal hacker world, it's not even a thing that you can't tell where a hack, it's not a thing to locate where the hack came from. Like, you can't really do that. But it is possible that maybe Homeland Security, maybe the CIA, maybe we have extra tools that actually can do that. Now, if we have extra tools, I'm sure that they wouldn't want to tell us what those tools are. Maybe there's human intel that confirms it. But I'm waiting for the intelligence agencies to say, yes, we can't tell where a hack came from digitally, but we have other information that confirms it. That would be something. Or I would expect them to say, yes, normally it's impossible to tell where a hack came from, but in this particular case, there's something special about it and we can. Or we have special tools in Homeland Security that people don't know about. Trust us that we can tell where every hack comes from. Well, I haven't heard that. All I've heard is, yeah, it's a hacker. He's over in Russia. The hack came from Russia. That's not enough. It exists technically. So somebody's saying that there is a technical way that we can tell who was sitting at the computer and what their intention was when they did this. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Now, it's possible, but I'm wondering, why aren't people saying, oh yeah, trust us, the NSA, they totally know where hacks come from. It's just maybe regular law enforcement can't do it. They don't have our tools. I'd believe that. It might not even be true, but I'd believe it. All right. So my operating belief, not confirmed, My operating belief is that members of the FBI, in either close or casual collusion with the Hillary Clinton campaign, staged an actual coup to overthrow the legally elected President of the United States. I would love to be wrong about that. I mean, I would love to be wrong about that. And this is a complete change from my prior positions. But at this point, it's just really hard to imagine anything else was going on. Just too many dots connected. And remember, it's not just that the dots look like they can connect, because you can connect any dots to any story of the past. You know, I caution you that all the time, that confirmation bias looks exactly like the real thing. But the fact that we haven't heard what that insurance policy was all about, just silence on that, no alternative explanation that makes sense. Sorry. So WikiLeaks says that the CIA can make a hack look like it came from Russia. Well, I think any hacker can do that. It's not just the CIA, right? Excuse me. I changed my mind because I didn't hear something. That's correct. I didn't hear the thing that should have happened that would have said this is not a coup attempt. At this point, I would say it is clearly an organized coup attempt. So let me make I was going to start to make this prediction. Let me not put this as a prediction. I'm going to say this is more like a 50% prediction, but it's something I haven't heard before. I think there's a non-zero chance that Mueller has already given up on the Trump collusion trail. I think there's a 50% chance he's given up on chasing that thread because there wasn't anything there, and is already halfway up the FBI's ass. It's possible that the only thing Mueller is spending most of his attention on right now is the coup attempt. Unless he was in on it, you know, chances not. But he seems to get a high marks for independence from essentially everybody. And he's been weirdly quiet through this whole thing. So I'll make a 50% prediction that Mueller has already given up on Trump collusion and is actually spending his unlimited budget and flexibility to chase down the coup. So we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are more people they need to talk to just to clear things up. And by the way, I'll double down. I'll go even further. If Mueller is not doing that, you have to wonder if he was in on it. That doesn't mean he was, but you gotta wonder if Mueller isn't halfway up the asses of everybody in the FBI on this coup thing, alleged coup. Then maybe he's in on it, because I can't imagine why he wouldn't be. Wouldn't be looking into it anyway. That's what Bill Mitchell says. So, yeah, I think Brennan has a lot of explaining to do. I'm just going to leave that there. I think John Brennan has a lot of explaining to do. I would put, we should do a jail pool. We should do a pool on who's most likely to go to jail. I think Brendan's near the top. But we'll see. All right. That's all I needed to say for today. I've got to go do some other stuff. And I will talk to you all later. And I hope my